So, what is comedy? I don't mean our answer for that. I mean Shakespeare's answer for that. What is a Shakespeare comedy? It is a number of things. First of all, every play we'll read this semester has what's called the new comedy plot, what we would call the romantic comedy or the marriage plot. This is from classical theater. It comes down from the ancient Greeks and would be familiar from Shakespeare. It's what he read in school. He read Roman comedians in school. It was part of the curriculum. Sometimes Shakespeare will flat out just like lift stuff from a Roman dramatist because there's no copyright and the Romans have been dead a long time. What is this plot? It's basically, let me simplify it for you or oversimplify it. Boy meets girl. Always a boy, always a girl. It's a heteronormative plot. It's also a class normative plot. These tend to be upper class couples, though not so upper class that they're politically important and where their marriage would actually have like major political implications. Not usually princesses, but what Shakespeare's generation called gentlemen, south of noblemen, but well above the regular people. Young gentlemen and ladies of the same social class meet. A gentleman and lady, sometimes, as we'll see pretty quickly, the more the merrier. More couples we can have, the better. Let's have boy meets girl. Parents don't understand. Traditional blocking is from the older generation who doesn't approve, and the young couple or couples have to find ways to end run around dad, mom, grandpa, Uncle Maximus, whoever it is. Hijinks ensue. That maneuvering gets complicated and crazy, and trickery and mistakes happen. Okay, and finally, for love conquers all. Right? That's dumbed down. Don't quote it. Don't put that in your papers. But it's boy meets girl. Parents don't understand. Hijinks ensue. Love conquers all. This happens all the time. Shakespeare will always do it. He will vary this plot. Sometimes he will downplay this plot. I suspect by the end of his career, he's not super excited about doing this plot yet again, but maybe I'm just projecting that. One of the things this does is it creates a formal clock. The play is meant to end not in a wedding, but in a betrothal, in an engagement. When all the couples are happily paired off, that's how we know the play is over. Watch out for marriages that take place, and some might happen in our first couple of readings, not in the usual place. If you get married in Shakespeare in Act 3, you're taking a tremendous risk. You're taking your life in your hands. Romeo and Juliet get married in Act 3. Look what happens to them. If the wedding happens with a lot of the play left to go, well, some other narrative has to fill that space, and it's either going to be bad, and it could get very bad, or it's going to be weird. Best case scenario, very weird. You will see weird and arguably bad happening, but look out. When the wedding happens early, wedding before the end is a sign that something is off in this play, and something strange there will be consequences. Too soon, it's just too soon. In classical drama and Roman drama, that's all you have. You have the boy-girl plot, what's called the new comedy plot, and that's it. Because classical drama also teaches you should have a single plot. Aristotle is very clear on this. It should be one plot. It should be happening one time in 24 hours and in one place, broadly conceived. Shakespeare just about always ignores all those rules. The few times he ever follows them are not on our syllabus, except if you're in the graduate section. Shakespeare never sticks to one plot. English drama does multiple plots. There are other kinds of comedy besides that new comedy, marriage-oriented comedy. It's called the new comedy. That means there must have been another kind of comedy before that. The old comedy. That's right. How old? Like the new old distinction is made in ancient Greece. So yeah, old comedy, people like Aristophanes, more anarchic, often political, not so representational, bizarre, satirical, all kinds of stuff happening. People are not pairing off. Closer to home for Shakespeare is a long tradition of medieval drama in English and folk drama, amateur drama essentially, though often written at a very, very high level, that had an enormous clowning tradition. So there's this tradition of English clowning that's happening all the time, not representational, not really about getting together. All kinds of things happen, kind of ridiculous, absurd characters doing crazy stuff. You will also find, and Shakespeare's company has a number of clowns. It has a chief clown in a given moment. This is a different kind of acting, clowning. You will see the clowns tend to be absurd, ridiculous characters. They're generally not getting paired off at the end. Sometimes they get lucky. They're not they're not on the marriage market. You're not wondering like, hey man, who's gonna marry Feste? He's such a catch. They are tend to be anachronistic. Wherever the play is set, the clowns kind of live more in the audience's world. And, there's no fourth wall yet. But the clowns, man, they don't even have a second wall. They're just here with us. They tend to be English from Shakespeare's period. They talk like that. It's like, okay, we've set our play in a distant romantic place. Oh, let's call it France. Actually, let's call it Athens, right? Then we're going to have a whole bunch of like English tradespeople hanging around, doing their normal, working guys just doing their normal stuff. This happens all the time. There are two different comedies, two different genres of comedy, always in sync together. So keep an eye on that. There's more than one kind of comedy in every one of these plays. There's at least two. Sometimes it gets higher than that. It gets to be more and more. I'd also point out classical comedy is not tragedy. You had two classical genres: tragedy, everything's bad. Everything is just awful. It's a disaster. It's a catastrophe. And it's comedy. Hey, everything's going to be okay. Ha ha, we'll go home. And for the Greeks and Romans, these are meant to be fundamentally separate. For Shakespeare, they never quite are. He's supposed to do it that way, but that's not what he does, and that's not what other professional theater makers in his period usually do. He will never write a tragedy without jokes. There's always a clown. The clown is part of the company, so all the tragedies have clowns, and a lot of things that people aren't clowns there's still a lot of humor in the tragedies. Hamlet is a funny son of a bitch with issues, admittedly. With very few exceptions, Shakespeare's comedy also treats the world as if tragedy isn't in another universe. Death, pain, loss are all very, very real things in these plays. There's that quieter, darker note that we will hear again and again. Read for it. It's not all happy, feel good all the time. It's not. Shakespeare's comedy does both laugh with and laugh at. The laugh at can be, in our terms, small p, political. Shakespeare's not interested in the political debates of our time because he doesn't know about them. Which of our current political parties would Shakespeare be in? He would be a Whig, I think, at best. He'd be a Whig, Federalist, I don't know. But of what's going on today, he has no idea. But in terms of power relations between different groups, men and women, English people and other people, racial groups, religious groups, different kinds of difference, there are real issues here, and there are some plays that are sometimes called problem plays because they seem very problematic to us, that they seem not satisfying, that they seem upsetting. If some of these plays seem upsetting you, if you think the happy ending isn't that happy, you have a lot of company. Over the last couple hundred years at least, and on this side of the camera too, I'm right with you. If there are some of these plays where you think that is not a happy ending, I agree. I would not want to have that ending happen myself. I do not necessarily approve of it. We will talk more about those cases as they go on. I tried to alternate the more problematic plays and the less problematic plays in an alternation, so we don't do 3 real downers in a row or 3 cheerful ones in a row. Shakespeare and his audience can also be extremely cruel. their idea of what's funny is sometimes to us extremely mean. So characters who we wouldn't consider any kind of political outgroup today are still treated sometimes very cruelly. Um, the past is a other country, as L.P. Hartley once said, and they do things differently there. Shakespeare's audience does not see the world as we do, and their appetite for cruel humor is sometimes quite startling and unsettling. I'm not saying that to excuse it, I'm saying that because it's there. So let's talk. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but like, let's look for that boy girl plot. It's always there. And Shakespeare's doing variations and changes on it because he's not going to do the same one every time. God knows that'll get tiring. There's the infinite variety of the clowning humor and other kinds of absurd, non romantic humor. And there's that darkness. Those are those tragic undertones that you can always hear right around the corner rustling in those moonlit leaves.